Hello and welcome to the channel. The story you're about to hear is about the strangest phenomenon in Hollywood history, when the faces that defined an era simply disappeared, leaving only silence and speculation. What makes someone walk away from fame? Can you truly vanish in the age of cameras? Picture this: a casting director in 1955, searching desperately for a contract player who hasn't shown up in 3 weeks. He finds the apartment empty except for headshots scattered across the floor, each one catching the light differently. Frozen smiles looking up at nothing. Barbara Payton's story begins not with disappearance, but with arrival. She steps off a bus in Hollywood in 1948, 20 years old, blonde hair catching the California sun just right. Within a year, she's under contract at Universal. Within 2, she's the female lead in film noir pictures, her face on movie posters, her name in trade papers. The camera loves her in that particular way it loved women in 1950, sharp cheekbones, knowing eyes, the kind of beauty that suggested both innocence and experience at once. In 1951, Barbara Payton is exactly where an actress wants to be. She's making Bride of the Gorilla. She's making Only the Valiant with Gregory Peck. She's making $4,000 a picture. She's being photographed at Ciro's nightclub, at premiere parties, at restaurant openings. The Hollywood Reporter mentions her 3 times in 1 week. This is the peak. She doesn't know it yet, but she's already falling. The trouble begins, as trouble often did in those days, with men. 2 men, specifically. Franchot Tone, older, sophisticated, MGM veteran, former husband of Joan Crawford. Tom Neal, younger, volatile, former boxer turned B-movie actor. Barbara becomes engaged to Tone in July 1951. By September, she's sleeping with Neal again. The scandal sheets love it. The studio executives don't. The 14th of September 1951, outside Tone's apartment on Sunset Boulevard, Tom Neal is waiting. Franchot Tone comes home. What happens next becomes the most photographed assault in Hollywood history. Neal beats Tone so severely that Tone requires months of facial reconstruction surgery. His nose is broken. His cheekbone is shattered. He needs brain surgery. The newspapers print every detail. The photographers catch Tone leaving the hospital, face wrapped in bandages, looking like a war casualty. Barbara marries Tone anyway. The marriage lasts 7 weeks. The studio system operates on reputation as much as talent, and Barbara's reputation is now unsalvageable. Universal drops her contract. No major studio will touch her. She takes roles in poverty, row productions, films shot in 5 days with budgets smaller than what she used to spend on clothes. Bad Blonde, The Flanagan Boy, shot in England because American producers won't return her calls. She's 23 years old, and her career is effectively over. But it's the next 15 years that truly define what disappearance means. Barbara doesn't leave Hollywood. She stays. She haunts Sunset Boulevard like a ghost haunting the scene of its death. She moves from apartment to apartment, each one smaller than the last, each one in a worse neighborhood. She starts drinking heavily, then pills, then anything she can get. By 1955, she's picking up men for money, sometimes on the Strip, sometimes in cheap bars on Western Avenue. The woman who once commanded $4,000 per picture is turning $20 tricks in parked cars. Former fans walk past her on the street without recognition. The platinum hair is gone, dyed dark, badly. At home, the careful makeup is smeared or absent. She weighs 90 pounds some days, 140 others, depending on what she can afford to eat or shoot. In 1963, she publishes a memoir. I Am Not Ashamed tells the whole story without flinching the affairs, the drugs, the prostitution. It sells reasonably well. She makes a few $1,000s. It's gone in months. The book changes nothing. Hollywood doesn't welcome confessors. It prefers its scandals quiet, its ruined stars invisible. She tries several times to get clean, stays with her parents in San Diego, checks into cheap motels with good intentions, and emerges 3 days later looking worse. Writes letters to old friends who don't write back. Applies for waitressing jobs and gets recognized, which somehow makes it worse the moment of recognition in the manager's eyes. The realization of who she used to be. The polite rejection. The vanishing happens slowly, then all at once. By 1965, almost no one in Hollywood knows where Barbara Payton is. She's not working. She's not in the hospitals. She's not in the scandal sheets anymore because even scandal requires a certain level of currency, and she has none. She exists in that particular kind of urban invisibility, present but unseen, alive but unnoticed. The 8th of May, 1967. San Diego, her parents' home. Barbara Payton is found dead in bed, 39 years old. The cause is heart and liver failure, the predictable end to years of alcohol and barbiturates. But there's something else in the autopsy report, something the newspapers don't emphasize. She was alone, not just at the moment of death, but for weeks, maybe months. The woman who once had 2 men fight to hospitalization over her dies with no one holding her hand. The funeral is small, a few family members, 1 or 2 people from the old days, though later no one will admit to being there. No Hollywood representatives attend. The trade papers run 3-sentence obituaries. Variety misspells her name. Within a year, most people under 30 have never heard of her. Within 10, she's trivia, a footnote in biographies of more famous actors, a cautionary tale told to young actresses who aren't listening. But here's what stays. The films still exist. Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye still plays on late-night television sometimes. You can see her there, frozen in 1950, 22 years old, beautiful and doomed, moving across the screen with no idea what's coming. The camera captured her forever. Life let her slip away. Gene Spangler is not a star. This matters. When a star disappears, the entire machinery of Hollywood mobilizes private investigators, studio fixers, newspaper reporters competing for details. When a bit player vanishes, the machinery hesitates. How hard do we look? How much do we care? Gene Spangler's disappearance reveals something about the hierarchy of concern, about whose absence creates panic, and whose creates only mild unease. The 7th of October 1949, Friday evening, Los Angeles. Gene Spangler is 27 years old, divorced, mother to a 5-year-old daughter. She works as an extra and bit player, the kind of roles with no lines, or one line, or woman in crowd. She's been in maybe 24 films, though if you watched them you wouldn't remember her. She's been trying to break through to speaking roles for 3 years. She tells her sister-in-law she's going to meet her ex-husband about child support payments, then possibly to work on a night shoot for a film. She kisses her daughter goodbye. She walks out of her house on Colgate Avenue in Westwood, wearing a brown jacket, a flowered print dress, and carrying a black suede purse. She never comes home. Saturday passes. Sunday. Her family calls the police Monday morning. The police, accustomed to missing persons in a city where people regularly flee debts and marriages, take the report without particular alarm. Actress seeks better opportunity in New York. Wife runs from abusive husband. Young woman starts fresh somewhere else. The list of probable explanations is long and mostly mundane. Then comes Thursday, October 13th, 6 days after Gene Spangler was last seen. A park maintenance worker in Griffith Park, near the hiking trails below the Griffith Observatory, finds a woman's purse in the brush near Ferndale Drive. Black suede, expensive enough to notice, cheap enough to afford on an extra's salary. Inside, makeup, compact, a mirror, keys, and a note. The note is torn. Part of it is missing. What remains says, Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away. The handwriting is Jean Spangler's. Now the machinery mobilizes. A note changes everything. A note suggests intention. The torn edge suggests violence. The mention of names Kirk, Doctor. Scott suggests a story that can be investigated. Suspects who can be questioned. Suddenly, this isn't a woman who left. This is a woman who was taken, or who walked into something she couldn't walk out of. Kirk Douglas is questioned first. He's filming Young Man with a Horn at the time. Already a rising star, 2 years away from Ace in the Hole and major fame. Yes, he says. He knows Jean Spangler slightly. She worked as an extra on a film he made, but he hasn't seen her in months, doesn't know anything about a note. The detectives believe him. The press circles him anyway for a few days, but nothing emerges. The Kirk in the note, if it refers to Kirk Douglas at all, remains unexplained. Dr. Scott proves more elusive. No doctor by that name can be found in Jean's address book or phone records. The police canvass physicians throughout Los Angeles. They find several Dr. Scotts, investigate each one, find no connection to Jean Spangler. The assumption, spoken quietly in detective squad rooms and printed carefully in newspapers, is that Dr. Scott is an abortion provider. This is 1,949. Abortion is illegal. Women who need them visit men who don't advertise, whose real names aren't used, who work out of anonymous offices, and whose patients pay in cash and tell no one. The theory builds itself. Jean Spangler was pregnant. She went to see an abortionist. Something went wrong. Either she died during the procedure or was killed afterward to hide the crime. Her body was disposed of somewhere in the vast, empty spaces around Los Angeles desert, ocean, the temporary lakes created by winter rain. The torn purse and note were dropped at Griffith Park to misdirect, or were dropped during a struggle, or were planted by someone who wanted the disappearance to look like something else. But theories are not evidence. The investigation expands and finds nothing. Jean's ex-husband, Dexter Benner, is questioned extensively. Their divorce was bitter. He was late on child support. He had motive, but he has an alibi. For October 7th, multiple witnesses place him elsewhere. He passes a polygraph. The detectives move on. Then someone remembers. Jean Spangler worked as an extra on a film earlier in 1949. Not just any film, a mob film. There were rumors about some of the men on set, rumors about organized crime connections, about the mob using film productions to launder money. Could Jean have seen something, known something, become inconvenient? The investigation looks briefly at this angle, finds nothing solid, abandons it. Weeks become months. The newspaper coverage fades. By Christmas 1949, Jean Spangler is no longer front-page news. The police file remains open, but inactive. A daughter is told that Mummy went away. Her family waits for a body that never surfaces. No body is ever found. No witness comes forward with reliable information. No deathbed confession is ever made. Jean Spangler's disappearance remains, 75 years later, completely unsolved. The purse sits in an evidence room somewhere, or used to, before evidence rooms were cleaned out and old cases were boxed up and moved to storage facilities and eventually disposed of. The note, if it still exists, contains its secrets. The torn edge matches nothing. Dr. Scott, if he existed, took his knowledge to his own grave decades ago. What remains is speculation. Was it abortion? Was it murder by a jealous lover? Was it mob retribution? Was it simply terrible luck, wrong place, wrong time, random violence? Was it, possibly, voluntary disappearance? Could Jean Spangler have staged her own vanishing, dropped the purse intentionally, started over somewhere with a new name? This last possibility haunts the case most deeply. The note could read as goodbye rather than distress. It will work best this way while mother is away. Could mean, while my mother is elsewhere, I can slip away unnoticed. The torn edge could have been deliberate, make it look like violence. Discourage a serious search. Jean Spangler, tired of bit parts and failed marriages and child support battles, could be alive somewhere, watching her daughter grow up from a distance, living quiet years in a small town under a name no one would recognize. But probably not. Probably the simpler explanation is true. Probably Jean Spangler died in October 1949, probably violently, probably because she was pregnant or knew something, or simply trusted the wrong person. Probably her body is still out there somewhere, bones in the desert, or scattered in a ravine, or paved over when Los Angeles expanded into the places that used to be empty. The photograph used in missing person reports shows her smiling, carefully styled hair, professional makeup. She looks hopeful. She looks like every actress who ever arrived in Los Angeles believing that luck and beauty and persistence would be enough. The photograph tells us nothing about what happened. It only reminds us that she was there, and then she wasn't. Gig Young won an Academy Award for playing a man slowly destroying himself. The film was They Shoot Horses, Don't They? The year was 1969. He played Rocky, the dance marathon MC, charming and hollow, pushing desperate people through increasingly brutal entertainment for an audience that enjoyed watching people break. The role required Gig Young to understand desperation, to embody it without flinching. He understood it perfectly. He'd been living it for years. His real name was Byron Barr. He changed it early in his career when he discovered another actor already had that name registered with the Screen Actors Guild. He took his stage name from a character he played in a 1942 film, Gig Young, a cheerful military officer. He wore that name for 36 years. Sometimes a borrowed name fits better than the one you were born with. Sometimes it becomes who you are. The career was solid, not leading man roles, but strong supporting work. Teacher's Pet with Clark Gable and Doris Day. That Touch of Mink with Cary Grant. Television work throughout the 1,960 seconds. He specialized in a particular type, the sophisticated friend, the charming drunk, the man whose wit concealed damage. Casting directors trusted him. Directors knew he'd show up prepared. He was reliable in that particularly valuable Hollywood way, good enough to improve a scene, not difficult enough to cause problems. But reliability in work often masks unreliability everywhere else. Gig Young drank, not socially, not controllably. He drank the way people drink when they're trying to make something inside them go quiet. He married 5 times. The marriages followed a pattern: initial charm, gradual dissolution, allegations of violence, divorce. His 4th wife, Elaine, later described episodes of paranoia, rage, accusations. She described a man who could be tender one moment and terrifying the next, whose moods shifted with a completeness that suggested something broken in the mechanism. The Oscar in 1969 should have stabilized things. Recognition, validation, proof of worth. But awards don't fix what's fundamentally wrong. Gig Young continued drinking, continued the pattern of volatile relationships, continued working, but less frequently. The roles came slower. The callbacks didn't happen. By 1978, he was 64 years old, and realizing what many aging actors realize, the phone doesn't ring as often as it used to. September 1978, Gig Young meets Kim Schmidt. She's 31, German-born, working as a secretary. They date 3 weeks. He proposes. She accepts. They marry on September 27th, 1978. in a quick ceremony. Friends later say they seemed happy, or at least that Gig seemed happy. Kim was quieter, harder to read. No one is sure she understood what she was marrying into. The apartment is on Osborne Street in Manhattan, a respectable building, 5th floor. They move in together after the wedding. Gig has work scheduled, a film production in a few weeks, possible television work in the spring. Kim is adjusting to being Mrs. Gig Young, to being married to a man whose name isn't even real, whose moods she's only beginning to understand. October 19th, 1978. 3 weeks and 1 day after the wedding, the neighbors hear no sounds, no argument, no screaming, no gunshots, or if there were gunshots, the neighbors don't register them as such. Manhattan apartments muffle sound, contain it. What happens inside stays inside until someone opens the door. The building superintendent opens the door. October 19th, evening, after concerned friends request a welfare check. She's in the bedroom, shot once in the head. He's in the living room, shot once in the head. There's a revolver near his body. There are no signs of struggle, no evidence of anyone else present. The medical examiner's conclusion is straightforward: murder, suicide. Gig Young shot his wife, then shot himself. The why remains speculation. Depression, paranoia, some unrecorded argument, or discovered betrayal. The toxicology reports show alcohol in Gig Young's system, but not an extreme amount, not enough to explain loss of control, only enough to lower inhibition. Perhaps that's all it took. Perhaps the inhibition was all that prevented this exact outcome years earlier, with other wives, in other apartments. The news breaks October 20th. Hollywood responds with the particular kind of shock that's not entirely shock. People who knew him expressed disbelief in quotes that contain buried acknowledgement. "I never thought he'd do something like this." Contains within it the admission that something like this was imaginable. "He seemed so happy lately," is the kind of thing people say when someone was often unhappy. The shock is genuine. The surprise is partial. The funeral is small, private. The Oscar sits somewhere in storage, or given to a relative, or sold eventually at one of those auctions of Hollywood memorabilia, where someone's greatest achievement becomes a collector's item. The films remain. You can watch They Shoot Horses, Don't They? And see Gig Young playing a man, orchestrating cruelty while smiling, and know that he understood that role from the inside. Kim Schmidt vanishes from the story almost immediately. She has no Hollywood legacy. She was married 3 weeks. The newspapers focus on Gig Young, his career, his Oscar, his previous marriages, his decline. Kim becomes a footnote, victim number 1 in a murder-suicide, the woman who married the wrong man at the wrong time. No one writes retrospectives about her. No one wonders what she wanted from life. She disappears into the crime, defined entirely by her death. The apartment on Osborne Street becomes a different story, a real estate listing that mentions nothing. A space cleaned and repainted and rented to people who don't know or don't care what happened there. The building remains. The address remains. The facts remain, recorded in police reports and newspaper archives. 2 people died, 1 killed, the other then killed himself. The rest is silence. What vanishes isn't always the body. Sometimes it's the explanation. Sometimes it's the truth behind the public face. Gig Young spent 36 years being charming on camera, playing men who used charm to conceal rot. Then the charm stopped working, or he stopped maintaining it, or something in him decided he didn't want to maintain it anymore. Whatever happened in that apartment happened in the space between the man people thought they knew and the man who actually existed. That space is where the real vanishing occurred, not in death, but in the gap between image and reality that Hollywood creates and maintains until it suddenly, violently, collapses. The sign says Hollywoodland in 1932. 13 letters, 50 feet tall, studded with 4,000 light bulbs that illuminate at night, visible for 25 miles. It's an advertisement for a real estate development in the hills above Los Angeles. The land beneath it is supposed to become homes for people who want to live above the city, above the smog and noise, where the air is clean and the view extends to the ocean on clear days. The sign is meant to be temporary, just long enough to sell the lots. Instead, it becomes permanent, then iconic, then immortal. Peg Entwistle arrives in Los Angeles in 1932. Her real name is Millicent Lillian Entwistle, but she's been Peg since childhood, since London and New York stages, where she performed from age 14. She's done Shaw, Ibsen, Coward. She's 24 years old and already has a solid career in legitimate theatre. But legitimate theatre pays irregularly and film pays consistently. So she comes west like thousands of others, believing that stage training translates to screen success. RKO signs her to a contract. Not a major contract, nothing guaranteed, but a contract nonetheless. She's cast in 13 Women, a mystery thriller, B-picture budget, but respectable production. She plays Hazel Cousins, one of 13 former boarding school classmates being killed off one by one. It's not a large role, but it's a credited role, with close-ups, with dialogue. It's the thing actors call exposure. It's supposed to lead to more work. The film is troubled from the start. The script is weak. The pacing is wrong. The director is struggling. RKO watches the dailies and sees a film that won't perform well. They start cutting. The final runtime is 63 minutes, short even for a B picture. Peg Entwistle's role is trimmed. Most of her scenes end up on the cutting room floor. What remains is barely noticeable. The film is released in September 1932 to poor reviews and worse box office. RKO doesn't renew Peg's contract. They don't exactly drop her. The contract was always temporary, but they don't offer her anything else. September passes. Peg looks for other work. Stage work, film work, anything. Los Angeles in 1932 is full of unemployed actors. The depression is deepening. Studios are cutting costs. Stage productions are closing. The arithmetic is simple and brutal. Too many actors, not enough roles, and Peg Entwistle is neither famous enough to demand attention nor young enough to be a fresh discovery. She's living with her uncle, Harold Entwistle, in a small house on Beechwood Drive, at the base of the hills below the Hollywoodland sign. She can see the sign from the house. Everyone in that neighborhood can see it. It's impossible not to see 50-foot letters spelling out the dream that brought her here, the dream that isn't working. Friday, the 16th of September, 1932, evening. Peg tells her uncle she's going to meet friends at a drugstore. She walks out of the house, wearing a jacket and carrying a purse. She doesn't go to any drugstore. She walks up Beechwood Drive, past the last houses, onto the dirt trail that leads up Mount Lee toward the sign. It's steep. It takes an hour to hike from the base. She hikes it in evening light, watching the sun set over Los Angeles, watching the city light up below. The sign stands on steep terrain. There's a maintenance ladder behind the letter H, wooden rungs, attached to the scaffolding that supports the sheet metal letters. The workmen use it when they need to change bulbs or repair weather damage. Peg Entwistle climbs the ladder, 50 feet up. The entire city is spread below her downtown Los Angeles to the east, the ocean to the west, the sprawl of suburbs in between. Somewhere down there are the studios that didn't want her, the casting offices that didn't call back, the apartments full of actors waiting for phones that wouldn't ring. She jumps from the H. She doesn't hesitate, based on what happens next. There's no moment of doubt, no grabbing for the ladder, no change of mind. She jumps and falls 50 feet to the rocks and scrub brush below. Death is immediate. Her body isn't found for 2 days. A woman hiking with her dog on Sunday morning sees something in the brush. She investigates. She finds Peg Entwistle's body, and near it, a purse containing a suicide note. The note is short. "I am afraid. I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain." The police identification is quick. The newspapers pick up the story immediately. Actress kills self on Hollywoodland sign becomes national news. The irony is too perfect not to emphasize the sign that represents Hollywood dreams becomes the site of Hollywood failure, the literal and symbolic killing of hope. Peg Entwistle becomes more famous in death than she ever was in life. Her name appears in more newspapers on the 19th of September, 1932, than it did during her entire career. Then comes the detail that makes the story unendurable. A letter arrives at her uncle's house a few days after her death. It's from the Beverly Hills Playhouse. They're offering Peg Entwistle a role in their next production. The part is significant, a lead role, well-reviewed play, exactly the kind of work that could revive a stalled career. The letter is dated September 14th, 2 days before her suicide. It was already in transit when she climbed that ladder. It was already decided when she jumped. If she had waited 3 days, if she had checked her mail once more. If. The funeral is September 21st. Theater people attend. A few film industry people, not many. She'd been in Los Angeles less than a year and hadn't made deep connections. The grave is in Glendale. The marker is simple. Within months, most people have forgotten her name again. 13 Women plays occasionally in second-run theaters, and no one in the audience knows that the woman in the small role killed herself before the film was released. But the sign remembers. Or rather, the culture remembers through the sign. Over the decades, people report seeing a woman in 1,930 seconds clothing near the H, especially on fog-heavy nights. She walks the trail. She climbs. She disappears. Park rangers and hikers tell these stories to each other, and whether they believe them or not, they keep telling them. Peg Entwistle becomes a ghost story, which is a form of immortality. The sign itself transforms. The land letters are removed in 1949. Hollywoodland becomes Hollywood. The original sheet metal letters decay and are replaced in 1978 with steel. The 50-foot height remains. The visibility remains. The symbolism remains. This is what Hollywood looks like from below. This is what you're trying to reach. This is how far you can fall. Peg Entwistle vanished twice. First, when she fell from the H into the brush where no one could see her for 2 days. Second, when she died before anyone really knew her name. The vanishing wasn't dramatic. It was administrative contract not renewed, phone not ringing, name not remembered. Hollywood had already forgotten her. She just made it official. Sessue Hayakawa was the first Asian actor to become a genuine Hollywood star, the first to command $5,000 per week, the first whose face on a poster guaranteed box office. In 1918, he was more famous than most white leading men. Women sent him fan letters by the thousands. Critics praised his magnetic presence. He owned a mansion. He drove a custom gold-plated car. He lived the Hollywood dream before Hollywood fully understood what that dream was. He was born Kintaro Hayakawa in Japan in 1886, son of a provincial governor. The family expected him to join the Navy. He failed the physical examination. The shame was considerable. He attempted seppuku ritual suicide. The attempt failed or was prevented. Sources differ. Instead of death, he chose reinvention. He came to America in 1907, studied political science at the University of Chicago, discovered theater, discovered he had talent, discovered he could become someone new. By 1914, He's in Los Angeles, working in theater, getting noticed. Thomas Ince casts him in The Wrath of the Gods. The film is successful. More roles follow. The Cheat in 1915 makes him a star. He plays a wealthy Japanese businessman who brands a white woman who owes him money. The film is controversial, criticized for racial stereotyping, but audiences love it. Sessue Hayakawa becomes bankable. The next 15 years are remarkable. He makes dozens of films. He forms his own production company, Haworth Pictures, with his wife Tsuru Aoki, also an actress. He has control over his roles, his image, his career, in ways that most actors don't achieve. He's wealthy enough to be eccentric. The gold car is only the beginning. He supposedly gambles away large sums, wins them back, gambles them away again. He lives expansively, visibly, the way stars are supposed to live. Then sound arrives. 1,927, 1,928, 1,929. The transition from silent films to talkies. Some stars survive it, many don't. John Gilbert's voice is too high. Clara Bow's Brooklyn accent is too strong. Sessue Hayakawa's voice is fine, deep, accented but clear, but his accent is Japanese, and Hollywood in 1930 is increasingly uncomfortable with that. Not uncomfortable enough to turn away his money when he was a silent star, but uncomfortable enough now to stop offering roles. There's also the practical matter of sound technology and racism intersecting. Silent films could be exported globally with translated title cards. Sound films require subtitles or dubbing, and American distributors are discovering that foreign markets won't pay premium prices for films featuring non-white actors in leading roles. The arithmetic shifts. Sessue Hayakawa becomes too expensive to cast in bit parts and too Japanese to cast in leads. The roles stop coming. Sessue Hayakawa appears in Daughter of the Dragon. It's a Poverty Row production, low budget, poorly distributed. Then he vanishes. No more Hollywood films, no announcements, no retirement interviews, no farewell tours. He's 44 years old, and he simply stops appearing on American screens. For the next 19 years, Hollywood assumes he's retired, or returned to Japan, or died quietly somewhere. He doesn't make newspapers. He doesn't appear in anniversary retrospectives. When silent film histories are written in the 1,940 seconds, he's mentioned in past tense, as if he's dead. The man who was once one of the most famous actors in the world becomes a historical footnote. But Sessue Hayakawa isn't dead. He isn't retired. He's in France. The reconstruction of those missing years comes in pieces. He arrives in Paris in the early 1,930 seconds. He performs in French theater. He learns French fluently. He appears in French films, not many, not famous ones, but working actor roles. He travels through Europe. He's in London sometimes, performing in plays. He's in Japan briefly in the late 1,930 seconds, but leaves before the war intensifies. He's back in France when Germany invades in 1940. The war years are murky. Sessue Hayakawa remains in occupied France. He's technically an enemy alien. Japan is allied with Germany, but he's also Asian in a way that complicates things. German racial ideology doesn't quite know what to do with Japanese citizens. He apparently performs occasionally, lives quietly, survives. Details are scarce. He gives few interviews about this period later. Sessue Hayakawa is 63 years old. The war has been over for 4 years. Hollywood is making different kinds of films now. Darker, more complex, influenced by European cinema. Someone remembers that Sessue Hayakawa used to be famous. Someone checks and discovers he's still alive. Offers are tentatively made. He appears in a few American films in the early 1000, 950 seconds. Small roles, character parts, nothing like his silent era fame. Then 1000, 957. David Lean is casting The Bridge on the River Kwai. He needs someone to play Colonel Saito, the Japanese commander. Someone suggests Sessue Hayakawa. He's 71 years old. He hasn't been a Hollywood star in 27 years. He takes the role. The performance is extraordinary. Not the stereotype of the silent era, not the exotic villain. A real character, proud, conflicted, exhausted, trying to maintain dignity in an impossible situation. The film is one of the biggest hits of 1957. Sessue Hayakawa is nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He doesn't win Red Buttons, wins for Sayonara. But the nomination alone is vindication. He works occasionally after that. A few more films, some television. He's no longer vanished, but he's also no longer pursuing fame. He's settling. He's proven what he needed to prove, that he still exists, that he was never actually gone, that Hollywood's forgetting him didn't erase him. He dies in 1973, age 87, in Tokyo. The obituaries are respectful, but brief. Most emphasize his work in Bridge on the River Kwai, mention his silent film stardom, skip lightly over the 19 years in between. The Vanishing is acknowledged but not explained. How does a major star disappear for 2 decades and no one notices? The answer is that disappearance is relative. Sessue Hayakawa didn't vanish from the world. He vanished from Hollywood, which to Hollywood is the same thing. He was working constantly during those missing years, just not in American films, not in English, not where Hollywood was watching. He was living in the gap between Hollywood's attention span and the actual world. The gold car is gone. The mansion is gone. The contracts and the fame and the time when he could command $5,000 per week, all gone. What remains is the films, both eras. You can watch him in The Cheat in 1915, young and magnetic and branded as exotic. You can watch him in Bridge on the River Kwai in 1957, old and tired and playing a man ground down by history. Between those two performances is a vanishing and a return, a lesson in what it means to be erased and what it takes to make yourself visible again on your own terms. The hairstyle has a name, peek-a-boo, blonde hair falling over one eye, creating mystery, suggesting glamour. Veronica Lake makes it famous in 1941. Women across America copy it. They go to salons with magazine pictures, point to Veronica Lake's face, say, "Make me look like that." The hair becomes so popular that the War Production Board asks her to change it. Women working in factories are catching their hair in machinery. The peek-a-boo style is causing industrial accidents. Veronica Lake does a photo shoot with her hair pulled back, pinned up, safe. The women keep copying the original anyway. She's born Constance Ockelman in Brooklyn, 1922. The name doesn't sound like a movie star. Neither does her childhood father dies when she's 12. Mother remarries. Family moves to Miami, then Montreal. Unstable years of relocation and adjustment. She's 4 feet 11 inches tall, small enough that camera angles have to be carefully managed. But the camera loves small women when they photograph tall, and Veronica Lake photographs perfectly. Paramount signs her in 1941. The name change comes immediately. Constance Ockelman becomes Veronica Lake, which sounds like water and moonlight and mystery. The roles start immediately too. I Wanted Wings, Sullivan's Travels, with Joel McCrea. This Gun for Hire, with Alan Ladd. She's exactly the right height to make Ladd look taller, and their chemistry is immediate, electric, bankable. 1900, 1,942 through 1,944 are the peak years. The Glass Key, I Married a Witch, So Proudly We Hail. She's making 5 films a year. She's on magazine covers. She's one of the top 10 box office draws in Hollywood. The peekaboo hair is copied, parodied, referenced everywhere. She's 22 years old and famous in the way that people are famous when a single image of them becomes cultural shorthand. But fame at 22 comes with particular dangers. Veronica Lake starts drinking, not socially, not the way stars drink at premieres and parties where photographers are watching. She drinks privately, heavily, constantly. She also develops a reputation for being difficult. She argues with directors. She shows up late. She's reportedly rude to crew members, dismissive of co-stars, contemptuous of the studio system that made her famous. Paramount tolerates difficult behavior when box office justifies it. When box office declines, tolerance disappears. By 1948, Veronica Lake's films are underperforming. The peekaboo style is dated. The roles being offered are smaller, worse. Her contract isn't renewed. She's 26 years old and her Hollywood career is essentially over. The descent is swift and steep. She moves to New York. She tries stage work, a production of Peter Pan, where she plays adult women and fairies. The reviews are poor. She tries television guest spots on anthology dramas, small parts that go nowhere. The drinking intensifies. Her marriages collapse. She marries and divorces 3 times, each marriage shorter than the last, each ending with allegations of alcoholism and violence. By 1960, Veronica Lake is living in cheap Manhattan hotels, taking whatever work she can find. She works as a cocktail waitress, not as publicity, not as a stunt, as actual employment. The kind where you need the tips to pay rent. She works at the Martha Washington Hotel. She works at other bars. Sometimes customers recognize her. Sometimes they don't believe it's really her. The peekaboo girl serving drinks in a dive bar seems too perfect as metaphor, too obvious as fallen star narrative. A journalist finds her. The story, Whatever Happened to Veronica Lake, runs in newspapers nationally. The article is sympathetic, but devastating. It describes her living situation, her work, her alcoholism, her bitterness. She's photographed serving drinks, looking tired, hair pinned back like the war production board wanted. The article creates brief, renewed interest. She gets a few acting offers. None lead anywhere. She tries to write an autobiography. It's published in 1969. Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake. The book is bitter, angry, score-settling. She names names. She describes the studio system's cruelties. She's unsparing about her own drinking and failures. The book sells modestly. The money doesn't last. The 1,970 seconds are mostly invisible years. She moves to Florida. She marries again a ship captain, working class, far from Hollywood. She takes occasional small roles in very low-budget films. She works maritime shipping jobs. She exists in that particular kind of anonymity, where you're not hiding, but you're not being looked for either. The 7th of July, 1973, Burlington, Vermont. Veronica Lake is visiting her mother. She collapses. She's rushed to the hospital. Acute hepatitis. The predictable end stage of decades of alcohol abuse. She dies that evening. She's 50 years old. The obituaries are respectful, but short. The headline in Variety is 6 words. Veronica Lake dies. Was. Film star. Was. Past tense. The career that ended in 1948 is being remembered 25 years later as something that happened a long time ago. The funeral is small. Her children attend. A few old friends. No Hollywood representatives make the trip to Vermont. The burial is quiet. Within weeks, the story is over. Veronica Lake joins the list of actresses who died too young from drinking. The list that includes too many names. The list that Hollywood creates and then pretends to be surprised by. But the image remains. The peak, a boo hair. The film noir, close-ups. The way she looked in Sullivan's Travels when she was 20 years old and the camera couldn't get enough of her. You can watch those films now. You can see what Hollywood saw. You can see why they made her famous and why fame wasn't enough to save her. The hairstyle killed women in factories. The career killed the woman who made it famous. Both things are true. Both things are documented. The War Production Board's concern was genuine safety violation. Preventable deaths. But no one issued warnings about what fame does to 22-year-old women. About what happens when your image outlives your relevance. About how hard it is to be remembered for something you did when you were young and can never be again. Veronica Lake vanished slowly. First from A pictures to B pictures to no pictures. Then from Hollywood to New York to Miami to Vermont. Then from working actress to cocktail waitress to forgotten woman to dead woman to photograph in film history books. The vanishing took 30 years. The fame took 3. The mathematics are brutal and exact. Hollywood gave her everything briefly and took it back permanently. Bobby Driscoll's voice is the first thing you hear in Peter Pan. Not the animated Peter Pan. Bobby Driscoll is the voice, recorded in 1951 when he's 14 years old. Still under contract to Disney. Still believing that child stardom leads naturally to adult stardom. His voice is perfect for the character. Confident, playful, perpetually young. The boy who never grows up. The irony will become unbearable later, but in 1951, it's just good casting. He's born in Iowa, 1937. The family moves to Los Angeles when he's 5. A barber notices him, mentions him to a casting director, and suddenly Bobby Driscoll is testing for films. He gets his first role at 6 years old. Lost Angel in 1943. Then more roles. The Fighting Sullivans. Sunday Dinner for a Soldier. He's good. Not cute child actor good. Actually good. He has timing. He has emotional range. Director's notice. Song of the South. Bobby Driscoll plays Johnny, the white child who befriends Uncle Remus. The film is controversial from the start. Its portrayal of slavery and race makes people uncomfortable even in 1946. But Bobby Driscoll's performance is praised universally. In 1949, he receives a special Juvenile Academy Award. He's 12 years old, holding an Oscar. Walt Disney standing beside him, smiling for photographers. Everything seems possible. Disney keeps casting him. So dear to my heart, Treasure Island. He plays Jim Hawkins, the lead role, carrying a major production at 13. Then Peter Pan. They use Bobby Driscoll as the live-action reference model. He acts out every scene. The animators draw from his movements, his expressions, his mannerisms. Then they record his voice. Peter Pan looks like Bobby Driscoll, sounds like Bobby Driscoll, is essentially Bobby Driscoll, translated into animation. But Bobby Driscoll is aging. This is the problem with child stars, they grow. At 16, Bobby Driscoll develops acne, bad acne, the kind that doesn't respond quickly to treatment, that scars, that makes you not look like the child you were 3 years ago. Disney drops him. No warning, no gradual transition. One day he has a contract. The next day, he doesn't. He tries to find other work. He auditions constantly, but he's caught in the gap between child actor and adult actor, and the gap is often fatal. He's too old for child roles. He's too associated with Disney innocence for teenage rebel roles. He's not handsome enough anymore for romantic leads. The phone stops ringing. Bobby Driscoll is 19 years old. He's been unemployed for 2 years. He starts using drugs, first marijuana, then heroin. The addiction is quick and total. He gets arrested for drug possession. The arrest makes newspapers. Former child star, Oscar winner, drug addict. The narrative is too perfect. The moral is too obvious. Hollywood loves a cautionary tale but doesn't love employing the subject of one. He moves to New York in the early 1960 seconds. The move is partly geographic relocation, partly escape, partly the thing addicts do when they believe location is the problem rather than addiction. He tries to find acting work in New York. Nothing. He tries to get clean. Can't sustain it. The pattern is familiar. Attempt recovery, relapse, arrest, jail time, release, relapse. By 1965, Bobby Driscoll has been out of films for nearly a decade. He's living in the East Village, the part of Manhattan where rent is cheapest, where people don't ask questions, where you can disappear if you want to or need to. He severs contact with his family, not dramatically, just stops calling, stops writing, stops responding when they try to reach him. He's 28 years old and entering the kind of invisibility that cities allow present but unseen, alive but untracked. The 30th of March, 1968, two boys playing in an abandoned tenement building on East 10th Street find a body. The body is in a back room, on the floor, decomposing. The boys run. The police come. The body has been there for weeks, possibly months. There's no identification on it, no wallet, no ID card, no papers, just a dead man in an abandoned building. One of dozens every year in New York City. The body is taken to the morgue. The fingerprints are taken. The body is buried in Potter's Field on Hart Island, New York City's mass grave for unclaimed bodies. The grave marker says, "Unknown male, March 1968. The file is closed. One more unidentified dead person. One more case where no one came looking. October 1969. 19 months later, Bobby Driscoll's mother is still looking for her son. She's been looking since 1965, since the last time she heard from him. She's filed missing persons reports. She's contacted police departments. She's hired private investigators. Nothing. No trace. No leads. No idea if he's alive or dead or simply doesn't want to be found. A fingerprint match finally connects the dots. The unidentified body buried in Potter's Field is Bobby Driscoll, the Disney child star, the Oscar winner, the voice of Peter Pan. He died alone in an abandoned building. He was buried in a mass grave. His mother was searching for him while he was already dead and buried under a number instead of a name. The cause of death is recorded as heart failure, likely drug-related. He was 31 years old, the same age as James Dean, younger than Marilyn Monroe, old enough to know that child stardom was over, not old enough to have figured out what comes after. Disney doesn't comment publicly. There's no official statement, no memorial, no acknowledgement beyond what's legally required. Peter Pan is still in theaters periodically through the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds. Children watch it not knowing that the voice they're hearing belongs to a man who died unidentified and was buried in a mass grave. The boy who never grows up was voiced by a boy who grew up badly, quickly, and died alone. The cruelty is almost perfect in its completeness. Bobby Driscoll gave Disney his childhood. Disney used that childhood to create one of its most valuable properties. When the childhood ended, when puberty and acne made him unusable, Disney discarded him with the efficiency of a corporation protecting its interests. No transition plan, no career counseling, no gradual step down to smaller roles while he matured. Just gone. His body was eventually reburied, moved from Potter's Field to a proper cemetery with a proper marker. But for 19 months, he was unknown male, Just a number, just another casualty of a city that contains millions and misses few. The boy who never grew up, grew old, and disappeared so completely that the system designed to identify the dead couldn't identify him until someone thought to check if any missing child stars matched the unidentified corpses from 1968. Peter Pan still flies. The animated character doesn't age. The voice doesn't change. Bobby Driscoll achieved the only kind of immortality Hollywood offers. He's permanent in the film. Everything else about him vanished. Thelma Todd owns a restaurant. This matters. Most actresses in 1935 don't own businesses. They have contracts, salaries, studio-provided housing. They don't have assets, investments, independent income. Thelma Todd has a restaurant on Pacific Coast Highway, Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, and it's successful. Real estate on the coast, a business with her name on it, something that exists separate from film work, something that represents independence in an industry that prefers dependence. She's been acting since 1926, comedy mostly. She's in Marx Brothers films, Monkey Business, Horse Feathers, playing the straight woman, which is harder than it looks, making Groucho's chaos work by staying composed while everything around her collapses into absurdity. She's in Laurel and Hardy films. She's in Charlie Chase shorts. She has perfect timing and she's beautiful in a particular 1,930 seconds. Way blonde, curvy. The press calls her the ice cream blonde, which is meant as compliment, suggesting sweetness, coolness, something American and wholesome. The restaurant opens in 1934. It's her project with her business partner, Roland West, a director she's worked with. The location is perfect, right on Pacific Coast Highway between Santa Monica and Malibu. Ocean view, close enough to Hollywood that industry people stop in regularly. The food is good. The atmosphere is upscale. It makes money. It also attracts attention of a kind that Thelma Todd doesn't want. Lucky Luciano is one of the most powerful mobsters in America in 1935. The mob is expanding west, looking for legitimate businesses to use for money laundering, for gambling operations, for fronts. A successful restaurant owned by a movie star is exactly what they want. According to later testimony, Luciano approaches Thelma Todd about installing illegal gambling in the restaurant. She refuses. The accounts vary on what happens next: threats, pressure, escalation. The 14th of December, 1935. Saturday night, Thelma Todd attends a party at the Trocadero nightclub on Sunset Strip. She's seen drinking, dancing, talking with friends. She leaves around 2 a.m. She's driven partway home by her boyfriend, but they argue. He drops her near her apartment. This is the last verified sighting of Thelma Todd alive. The 16th of December, 1935. Monday morning. Her body is found in her car in the garage behind the restaurant. She's slumped over the steering wheel. The engine is off. The garage door is closed. The preliminary examination suggests carbon monoxide poisoning. The initial assumption is suicide, though no note is found. Then accident. Then the examination gets more detailed. The autopsy reveals complications. Yes, carbon monoxide poisoning killed her, but there's blood on her face. Her nose is broken. She has bruises, fresh bruises, sustained around the time of death. Her evening dress is torn. There are other injuries, defensive type injuries, the kind that suggest struggle. The official ruling remains accidental death, possibly suicide, but the evidence suggests something else. The investigation creates more questions than answers. The garage is up a steep flight of stairs, over 270 steps from the restaurant. Why would Thelma Todd climb all those stairs in evening clothes and heels after a night of drinking? Why not drive to the front entrance? Her car was in the garage with the engine off. Had she started the car, then turned it off? Had someone else started it? The timeline doesn't work cleanly. The evidence contains contradictions. Witnesses come forward with conflicting stories. Someone saw her arguing with a man near the restaurant Sunday morning. Someone else saw her Sunday afternoon, looking distressed. A doctor claims she visited him Saturday complaining of threats. The district attorney opens a grand jury investigation. 40 witnesses testify. The theories multiply. Mob hit, ex-husband's revenge, business partner's betrayal, accidental overdose covered up to look like carbon monoxide poisoning. Lucky Luciano is never formally questioned. He's not mentioned in the official investigation. The grand jury concludes that Thelma Todd died of carbon monoxide poisoning and that the circumstances are consistent with accident or suicide. No criminal charges are filed. The case is closed. But the evidence suggests murder. The broken nose, the torn dress, the bruises, the improbability of the suicide explanation, the convenient resolution of the gambling pressure. The timing she refuses the mob. She dies. The restaurant passes to partners who are more cooperative. The arithmetic is simple and dark. Roland West, her business partner and former lover, becomes a suspect in whispered conversations but never officially. He's the one who found her body. He had keys to the garage. He had motive if the business was struggling or if their relationship was more complicated than admitted. Years later, on his deathbed, West allegedly confesses to accidentally killing Thelma Todd. They argued. He hit her. She died. He staged the carbon monoxide scene. But this confession is secondhand, uncorroborated, convenient. The truth vanishes with the principals. Lucky Luciano dies in 1962. Roland West dies in 1952. Thelma Todd's ex-husband dies in 1950. Everyone who might know what happened in that garage is dead. The physical evidence is gone, stored somewhere, then lost, then destroyed in routine evidence purges. The case files remain, but they contain only the official story, not the real one. The restaurant continues operating for a while, changes hands, eventually closes. The building still stands on Pacific Coast Highway, repurposed several times, now housing something else entirely. The garage where Thelma Todd died is still there, or was, until recent renovations. People used to visit it, stand outside. Imagine what happened on those stairs, in that enclosed space, on that December night. Thelma Todd is 31 years old when she dies. She's successful. She's financially independent. She owns property. She has a career. She has options. And one Saturday night, something happens in a garage, and all those options end. The official story is tidy. The actual story is lost. What vanishes isn't always the body. Sometimes it's the truth. Sometimes it's the explanation. Sometimes it's the ability to ever know for certain what happened. Thelma Todd's films still exist. You can watch her in Marx Brothers movies, see her timing, her beauty, her particular talent for making chaos seem manageable. The camera shows you who she was on screen. It doesn't show you what happened after she left the Trocadero at 2 a.m. on the 14th of December 1935. That's the part that vanished. That's the part that stayed in the garage, sealed up behind official rulings and convenient explanations, and the particular kind of forgetting that happens when powerful people want something forgotten. Everett Sloane's face is one of the first faces you see in Citizen Kane. He plays Bernstein, Charles Foster, Kane's loyal business manager, the man who remembers everything, who tells the story with detail and affection, and the particular sadness of someone who watched greatness become tragedy. Sloane is 27 years old when the film is made in 1941. He's part of Orson Welles' Mercury Theatre Ensemble, radio actors brought to Hollywood, stage-trained performers who understood language and timing in ways that film actors sometimes didn't. The face is distinctive, not handsome in the conventional leading man way. Character, actor, handsome, interesting features, expressive eyes, the kind of face that suggests intelligence and complexity. Perfect for supporting roles, for the men who surround the lead, who make the story work by being completely real in the margins. After Kane, the roles keep coming. Journey into Fear, The Lady from Shanghai, film noir pictures, where Everett Sloane plays lawyers, criminals, corrupt officials. Television work through the 1,950 seconds, anthology dramas, live broadcasts, the kind of work where stage training is valuable because there's no second take, no editing, just performance happening in real time. Patterns, in 1955, makes him briefly famous to television audiences. He plays a ruthless executive, cold and calculating, the kind of role he does well. He works constantly through the early 1,960 seconds. Character actors can work longer than leading men because character actors age into roles rather than out of them. Everett Sloane at 45 looks exactly right for middle-aged authority figures, for men with power and secrets, for fathers and bosses and antagonists. He's reliable. He's professional. He's the kind of actor directors want because he makes their job easier, shows up prepared, hits his marks, delivers the lines with the exact right emphasis. Then something goes wrong with his eyes. The accounts vary on the specific diagnosis. Some sources say glaucoma. Some say a degenerative condition. The details matter less than the result. Everett Sloane starts losing his vision. Not immediately, not overnight, but progressively, measurably, irreversibly. His eyesight begins to fail. For most people, vision loss is tragedy. For an actor, it's professional death. Acting requires seeing your scene partners, seeing the camera, reading scripts, hitting marks, finding light. Everett Sloane's entire career depends on his ability to look at things and respond appropriately. As his vision declines, that ability declines with it. He consults specialists. He tries treatments. Nothing stops the progression. The prognosis is clear. He's going blind. Maybe not completely. Maybe not immediately. But blind enough that he won't be able to work. Blind enough that reading will become impossible. Blind enough that the career is over. Some actors might retire gracefully, take the residuals, live quietly, adjust to a new life. But Everett Sloane is 55 years old. He's not wealthy. Character actors rarely are. He's not famous enough for a comfortable retirement. He's facing years of unemployment, dependence, inability to do the thing that defined him for 30 years. The prospect is unbearable. The 6th of August, 1965, Los Angeles. Everett Sloane is found dead in his home. The cause is barbiturate overdose. The amount consumed suggests intention, not accident. There's a note. The note is brief. I can't take it anymore. The note doesn't elaborate. It doesn't need to. Everyone who knew about his vision understands immediately. He couldn't take going blind. He couldn't take ending his career. He couldn't take the future he saw coming, unemployment, disability, uselessness. So he ended it on his own terms, while he could still see well enough to measure the dose, to write the note, to make the decision that felt like the only decision. The funeral is small. Industry people attend, but not many. Everett Sloane was respected but not beloved, known but not famous. The obituaries are respectful but brief. Variety runs 3 paragraphs. The Hollywood Reporter mentions him in the weekly roundup of industry deaths. The emphasis is on Citizen Kane, because that's the most famous thing he did, the role that ensures he won't be completely forgotten. But mostly he is forgotten. By 1970, if you mention Everett Sloane, most people under 30 don't recognize the name. By 1980, film students learning about Citizen Kane need footnotes to identify the supporting cast. By 1990, he's trivia. By 2000, he's a name in credits. a face in an old film, a man who died before most people watching were born. The particular tragedy of Everett Sloane's suicide is how reasonable it seemed to him, not impulsive, not the product of temporary depression, calculated, rational. He looked at his future blindness, unemployment, dependence, and decided that ending his life was preferable to living it. The note confirms this. Not, "I'm in pain, but I can't take it anymore," suggesting evaluation, consideration, decision. What makes someone decide that life without sight isn't worth living? Partly practical concerns, partly identity. If you're an actor for 30 years, if that's how you understand yourself, if your value is tied to your ability to perform, then losing the physical capacity to perform feels like losing yourself. Everett Sloane couldn't imagine being Everett Sloane without being able to act. The equation seemed simple. No vision means no acting, means no identity, means no point. But people go blind and survive, adjust, find new meaning, learn new skills, continue living differently but successfully. Everett Sloane either couldn't see that possibility or rejected it. Either way, the result was the same. The 6th of August, 1965, a house in Los Angeles, a measured dose of barbiturates, a brief note, a deliberate exit. The films remain. Citizen Kane plays regularly in revival houses, film classes, streaming services. Everett Sloane is there in the first act, telling Bernstein's stories, providing the emotional foundation for Kane's rise. The performance is perfect, warm, intelligent, loyal, sad in exactly the right proportions. You can watch it and see an actor at the peak of his craft, completely in control of every gesture and inflection. You can't see in the performance that 34 years later, that actor would choose death over blindness. You can't see the future he was facing in 1965. The camera captures only what was in front of it in 1941. A young character actor, talented and professional, building a career that would end with a note and an empty bottle, and a decision that seemed, to him, like the only reasonable choice available. What vanished with Everett Sloane wasn't just a person. It was a kind of desperation that actors rarely discuss publicly. The fear of becoming unable to work, the terror of losing the thing that defines you, the calculation that runs constantly in the back of every performer's mind. How long can this last? When it ends, what then? Everett Sloane answered those questions in the most final way possible. The answer vanished with him. Dorothy Arnold's father is a perfume importer. Wealthy, respectable, the kind of New York family that appears in society columns for appropriate reasons. Charity galas, debutante balls, proper marriages to proper people. The Arnolds live at 108 East 79th Street, Manhattan. A good address, a substantial townhouse, the physical manifestation of upper middle class stability. Dorothy is born into comfort in 1884. She receives the education appropriate for her class. She's expected to marry well, manage a household, continue the family's social position. She wants something else. She wants to be a writer, or an actress, or both. The distinction matters less than the desire she wants to be known for something she creates, rather than something she inherits. She writes stories. She submits them to magazines. They're rejected. She tries to get them published under a pseudonym. Still rejected. The writing isn't quite good enough, or the market isn't interested, or women of her class aren't supposed to need money from magazine work. The rejection accumulates. So she tries acting, minor stage work, small productions, nothing her family approves of. Actresses in 1910 are not respectable, not among the Arnold social circle. Working on stage suggests financial need or moral looseness, neither of which is acceptable for a perfume importer's daughter. Dorothy does it anyway. She's 25, 26, pushing against the limits of what her family will tolerate. the 12th of December, 1910, Monday morning. Dorothy Arnold leaves the townhouse around 11 a.m. She tells her mother she's going shopping on 5th Avenue. She's wearing a dark blue suit, black hat, mink collar, carrying a purse. She walks out the door into cold New York winter weather. She's seen by acquaintances at various points that morning. She stops at a bookstore, purchases a book, chats briefly with a friend. She walks south on 5th Avenue. Around 2 p.m., she's seen near 25th Street, then nothing. She doesn't come home that evening. The family waits. Perhaps she went to a friend's house, stayed late, decided to sleep over. Perhaps she met someone, lost track of time. By Tuesday morning, concern is rising. By Tuesday evening, it's panic. By Wednesday, the family should be contacting police. They don't. The Arnolds wait 6 weeks before reporting Dorothy missing. 6 weeks. The delay is never fully explained, but the implication is clear. They believed she left intentionally, perhaps eloped with an unsuitable man, perhaps ran away to pursue acting without family interference, perhaps something else embarrassing that needed to be handled privately, quietly, without police involvement or newspaper coverage. 6 weeks suggests hope that she'd return on her own, that whatever she was doing could be undone quietly. She doesn't return. By late January 1911, the family accepts that private searches aren't working. They contact police. They hire Pinkerton detectives. The newspapers get the story. Heiress missing from 5th Avenue becomes national news. The details are perfect for 1,911. Sensationalism, wealthy family, beautiful daughter, mysterious disappearance, implications of scandal. The investigation finds very little. The bookstore sale is confirmed. The friend she spoke with is interviewed. The last sighting near 25th Street is verified. After that, nothing. No one sees her enter a building. No one sees her get into a car. No one sees her with a man. She's on 5th Avenue in afternoon daylight, and then she simply isn't. Theories develop immediately. The romantic elopement theory. Dorothy ran off with an unsuitable lover. Perhaps the man her family had disapproved of. Perhaps someone new. They left the city together, started over somewhere else with new names. The abortion theory. Dorothy was pregnant, went to see a doctor, died during the procedure, was disposed of to hide the crime. The murder theory. She was kidnapped, killed, her body hidden. The voluntary disappearance theory. She staged her own vanishing, used family money to establish a new identity, lives quietly somewhere as someone else. The Pinkerton detectives follow every lead. They investigate Dorothy's friends, her correspondence, her recent activities. They find suggestions of a romance with an older man, a man her family considered inappropriate. The man is investigated. He denies involvement. There's no evidence connecting him to the disappearance. The lead goes nowhere. Tips arrive from everywhere. Dorothy is seen in Boston, in Philadelphia, in Chicago, in Italy. Every sighting is investigated. Everyone proves false. The woman who looked like Dorothy Arnold wasn't Dorothy Arnold. The timeline doesn't work. The details don't match. The leads exhaust themselves. 11 years after the disappearance, Dorothy Arnold is declared legally dead by court order. This is the procedure when someone vanishes completely, wait 7 years, petition the court, receive a death certificate despite no body. Her family accepts the legal fiction. The investigation continues sporadically, but without hope. By 1925, the Pinkerton detectives have closed the case. By 1930, Dorothy Arnold is a historical footnote, a famous disappearance from a bygone era. Her mother never accepts it. She keeps Dorothy's room unchanged, clothes in the closet, books on the shelf, everything exactly as it was on the 12th of December, 1910. She keeps a lamp, burning in the window facing 79th Street, the signal fire for a daughter who might find her way home. The vigil continues for decades. When Dorothy's mother dies in the 1930 seconds, the room is finally packed up, the lamp extinguished. No one has heard from Dorothy Arnold in 25 years. The file is never officially closed. Technically, Dorothy Arnold is still a missing person in NYPD records. The case has been reviewed periodically in the 1950 seconds, in the 1970 seconds, again in the 1990 seconds, when computer databases allowed new searches. Nothing new is ever found. Dorothy Arnold walked away on the 12th of December 1910 and disappeared so completely that over a century of investigation has revealed nothing definitive about what happened. The most likely explanation is the simplest. She died within hours or days of disappearing. Abortion, murder, accident, suicide. Her body was disposed of, buried anonymously, lost in the river, hidden in construction sites that were later paved over as New York expanded. She's still in the city somewhere, bones in the foundation of a building that was built in 1911, unidentified remains that will never be identified. But the other possibility haunts the case. Dorothy Arnold wanted to disappear. She wanted to escape her family, her class, her limited options. She had enough money in her purse to travel. She had the intelligence to plan it. She could have walked away deliberately, taken a train to somewhere distant, started over with a new name in a city where no one knew the Arnolds. She could have lived decades elsewhere, possibly died of old age in the 1960 seconds, never revealing who she used to be. If she did vanish voluntarily, she succeeded perfectly. No trace, no sightings that hold up under scrutiny, no deathbed confessions, no records ever found linking Dorothy Arnold to any other identity. She became what she wanted, not a socialite daughter, not a failed writer, not a struggling actress, but a mystery. A woman who walked away from privilege and disappeared so completely that over 100 years later, no one knows if she's a victim or an escape artist. The ambiguity is perfect. The vanishing is complete. Albert Dekker is not a star. He's a working character actor, the kind who appears in 50 films over 30 years without ever carrying one. He's the villain in Doctor, Cyclops. He's the gangster in The Killers. He's the corrupt politician in East of Eden. He's recognizable if you watch enough old films, but not famous, not the kind of actor whose death would normally make front-page news. The 5th of May, 1968. Sunday evening. Albert Dekker's fiancée becomes concerned. He was supposed to meet her. He didn't show up. He's not answering his phone. She goes to his apartment on Normandy Avenue in Hollywood. She knocks. No answer. She uses her key. The door is locked from inside with the chain. She can't get in. She calls the building manager. The manager and a maintenance worker force the door. They enter the apartment. They check the living room. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. The bedroom. Empty. They try the bathroom. The door is locked from inside. They force this door too. They find Albert Dekker. He's naked. He's in the bathtub. He's dead. His body is bound with ropes and handcuffs. There are hypodermic needles stuck in his arms. There are obscene words written on his body in red lipstick. The scene is grotesque, bizarre, impossible to explain simply. The police are called. The initial investigation focuses on obvious questions. Who else was present? The apartment was locked from inside, with the chain across the door. The bathroom was locked from inside. There's no sign of forced entry, no sign of struggle, no evidence of anyone else being there. But the position of the body, the bindings, the needles, these suggest someone else must have been involved. The medical examiner rules it accidental death. The official explanation: autoerotic asphyxiation. Albert Dekker engaged in solo sexual activity that went wrong. The bindings were self-applied. The needles were self-administered. The words on his body were written by himself. The locked doors prove he was alone. The death was accident, not suicide, not murder. The explanation is accepted officially, but doubted privately. The logistics seem impossible. How do you handcuff yourself in a way that prevents escape? How do you bind ropes that tightly alone? How do you write legibly on your own body? The scene suggests either elaborate preparation or someone else's presence, but the locked doors suggest he was alone. The contradiction is never resolved. Albert Dekker's family contests the findings. They insist he wasn't engaged in anything deviant. He was a normal man, engaged to be married, no history of unusual behavior. They suggest murder covered up to look like something else, but there's no evidence of murder, no suspect, no motive that makes sense. The police have a dead man in a locked room with no sign of anyone else present. The press handles the story carefully. This is 1968. Newspapers don't print explicit details about sexual practices. The coverage is vague. Found dead in unusual circumstances. Died accidentally during private activities. The real details circulate as rumors. The story becomes the kind of thing people whisper about but don't discuss openly. Albert Dekker's career is quietly erased from memory. Studios don't mention him in retrospectives. Film historians skip over him. When his films air on television, his name appears in the credits, with no commentary. The manner of his death makes him embarrassing. Hollywood prefers its scandals to be dramatic drug overdoses, violent crimes, dramatic suicides. Albert Dekker's death is too strange, too uncomfortable, too difficult to incorporate into any narrative. The locked room problem remains unsolved. Either Albert Dekker died alone in an elaborate sexual practice that went wrong, or someone was with him and managed to leave a locked apartment and locked bathroom without leaving any trace. Both explanations strain credibility. Both explanations have problems. The truth is somewhere between them, but exactly where is impossible to determine. Consider the first explanation. He was alone. This requires believing that a 62-year-old man could handcuff himself, bind himself with ropes, inject himself with needles, write on his own body, and then somehow lose control in a way that caused death. It requires believing he had done this before, successfully, and this time it went wrong. It requires accepting that the locked doors prove solitude rather than suggesting staging. Consider the second explanation. Someone else was present. This requires explaining how that person left a locked apartment with the chain across the door and a locked bathroom with no sign of forced exit. It requires finding evidence of another person when the police found none. It requires motive. Why kill Albert Dekker in such a bizarre way? Why stage it as autoerotic accident? What does the killer gain? Neither explanation is satisfying. Both contain elements that don't quite work. The case remains technically closed, but functionally unsolved. Albert Dekker died on the 5th of May 1968, under circumstances that were never adequately explained, despite official rulings and medical examiner reports. The funeral is small, private. The obituaries are brief. Character actor dies at 62, says Variety, giving cause of death as accidental. The Hollywood Reporter runs 3 sentences. Within months, Albert Dekker is forgotten by everyone except film scholars who need to identify character actors in old films. But the locked room remains. The mystery remains. The question of what really happened in that Hollywood bathroom remains. Was it truly an accidental death during solo activity? Was it murder staged to look like something else? Was it suicide arranged to look like accident to protect his family from stigma? All 3 possibilities have been suggested. None has been proven. What vanished with Albert Dekker wasn't just a person. It was the truth. The real story of what happened stayed locked in that bathroom. The official explanation may be accurate or may be convenient. The alternative explanations may be conspiracy theories or may be suppressed facts. Without conclusive evidence, without witnesses, without any way to reconstruct events, the truth becomes permanently inaccessible. The films remain. Dr. Cyclops still plays occasionally. The Killers is considered a classic. Albert Dekker is visible in these films, alive, working, professional. The camera shows nothing of what will happen 30 years later in a locked bathroom. It only shows an actor doing his job, playing his roles, giving no indication of the grotesque end that waits. The performance is separate from the death. The work survives. The truth vanished. Jean Harlow's hair is platinum blonde. Not naturally. She bleaches it weekly with peroxide and ammonia, a mixture that damages the hair permanently, that requires constant maintenance, that will eventually make her hair brittle and thin. But the platinum blonde is her signature, her brand, the thing that makes her immediately recognizable. She's the platinum blonde. Before she's anything else, not an actress first, but a hair color, a look, an image. She's born Harley and Carpenter in Kansas City, 1911. The name Jean Harlow is invented, borrowed from her mother's maiden name. She arrives in Hollywood at 16, marries at 17, divorces at 18. The early years are standard Starlet trajectory bit parts, exploitation films, nothing that suggests major stardom ahead. Then Howard Hughes casts her in Hell's Angels in 1930. She's 19 years old. The film is a massive hit. Jean Harlow becomes famous overnight. The next 7 years are peak Hollywood. Red Dust with Clark Gable, Dinner at 8, Bombshell, Libeled Lady. She's making 6 films a year at her busiest. She's MGM's biggest female star, bigger than Greta Garbo in box office terms, more popular than Joan Crawford. She's 24 years old and at the top of the industry. The future seems infinite, but there are signs. She fatigues easily. She gets sick frequently. Colds that last too long. Flu that becomes bronchitis. Minor illnesses that take weeks to recover from. She drinks water constantly but stays thirsty. She bruises easily. Her skin takes on a yellowish tint that makeup has to cover. The studio notices but doesn't act. Stars work through illness. The schedule is more important than health. The 29th of May, 1937, Saturday. Jean Harlow is filming Saratoga with Clark Gable. She collapses on set. Not dramatically. She just sits down between takes and doesn't get up. She says she's tired. The director sends her home. She rests over the weekend. Monday she returns to set. She seems fine. Tuesday she's struggling. Wednesday she collapses again. This time the doctors are called. They examine her at home. She's living with her mother. Always has lived with her mother. Never achieved full independence despite fame and money. The doctors are concerned. They want her hospitalized immediately. Her mother refuses. Her mother, Mama Jean, is a Christian scientist. Christian Science teaches that illness is illusion, that prayer heals, that medical intervention demonstrates lack of faith. Mama Jean prays. Jean Harlow stays home. By Friday, Jean Harlow is unconscious. The studio intervenes. They override Mama Jean's objections. Jean Harlow is taken to Good Samaritan Hospital. The diagnosis is immediate and dire. Acute kidney failure. Her kidneys are shutting down. Toxins are building in her blood. She's uremic, going into coma. The prognosis is poor. The cause is debated. Some doctors suggest scarlet fever in childhood damaged her kidneys. Some suggest the years of bleaching her hair with toxic chemicals contributed. Some suggest she had glomerulonephritis, an inflammation that went untreated too long. All agree that earlier intervention might have helped. Dialysis doesn't exist in 1937. Kidney transplant won't be developed for decades. Once the kidneys fail completely, there's no treatment. The 7th of June, 1937, Monday morning, Jean Harlow dies. She's 26 years old. She's been unconscious for days. Her mother is at her bedside. Clark Gable is waiting outside the hospital. William Powell, her fiancé, is devastated. The studio is in crisis. Saratoga is unfinished. They have a dead star and a half-completed film and a release date that can't be moved. The funeral is elaborate. 15,000 people attend. The flowers cost $50,000. The casket is bronze with gold trim. Jeanette MacDonald sings. Nelson Eddy sings. Every major star in Hollywood is present or sends representatives. The newspapers cover it like a state funeral. Jean Harlow is buried in a white gown, her platinum hair carefully styled, her makeup perfect. She looks like she's sleeping. She looks like she could wake up and walk back to the set. MGM finishes Saratoga using body doubles for Jean Harlow's remaining scenes. They shoot from behind. They use long shots. They have other characters speak her dialogue off camera while the double stands with her back to the lens. The film is released in July 1937. It's a huge hit. People go to see Jean Harlow's last performance. They go to see The Ghost. The film makes more money than any of her previous films. Death is good for box office. The mythology builds immediately. She died young and beautiful. She never got old. She never declined. She never had a failed comeback or a desperate return. She left at peak fame, peak beauty, peak everything. The platinum hair is immortal. The films are permanent. Jean Harlow becomes the template for dying at the perfect moment before age, before fading, before the industry loses interest. But the template obscures the reality. Jean Harlow didn't die at the perfect moment. She died of kidney failure caused by untreated illness and her mother's religious objections to medical care. She died young because treatment was delayed. She died beautiful because she was 26, not because there's something romantic about dying young. The myth requires forgetting the uremia, the yellow skin, the unconsciousness, the waste of potential. The platinum blonde hair eventually kills its imitators too. The peroxide and ammonia mixture that Jean Harlow used causes chemical burns, hair loss, scalp damage. Women copying her look damage themselves, copying something that was already damaging. The beauty was achieved through poison. The poison eventually contributed to death. The circle is complete. What vanishes with Jean Harlow is different from what vanishes with other actors. She doesn't vanish into obscurity or poverty or forgotten death. She vanishes into mythology. The real person, Harleen Carpenter from Kansas City, daughter of an overbearing mother, woman who wanted to marry William Powell and retire from acting. That person disappears behind the image. The platinum blonde remains. The films remain. The iconography remains. The actual woman vanishes into her own legend. Saratoga is Jean Harlow's ghost story. You can watch it and see her in early scenes, alive and working. Then you can watch the later scenes and see the body double, back turned, standing where Jean Harlow would have stood if she had lived another month. The film is her epitaph and her monument. It proves she existed and demonstrates her absence simultaneously. Clark Gable never quite recovers from her death. They were close friends, possibly lovers, definitely partners who understood each other. He attends the funeral, but doesn't speak. He finishes Saratoga, working opposite a ghost. Years later, he still mentions her in interviews, still talks about how good she was, how young, how wasted. The studio moves on. MGM has other stars. Other blonde actresses are promoted. Within a year, Jean Harlow is past tense. Within 5 years, she's history. Within 10 years, she's a reference point for younger actresses. The next Jean Harlow, meaning blonde, sexy, doomed. The template is established. The Vanishing is complete. She died and became permanent. The films captured her forever. The kidney failure let her slip away. The platinum hair remains perfect in every frame, poisonous and beautiful, exactly like Hollywood itself. Jim Thompson writes novels about people who are barely holding together, people whose interior monologues reveal rot and desperation and the particular American madness of the mid-20th century. The killer inside me, Pop, 1280. The grifters, a hell of a woman. The prose is clean and brutal. The characters are psychopaths, grifters, small-town sheriffs who are worse than the criminals they chase. The books sell moderately in their time and are forgotten quickly after. He's born in Oklahoma, 1906. His father is a sheriff who drinks. The family moves constantly. Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, back to Oklahoma. Jim Thompson works oil fields, works as a bellhop, works whatever jobs exist during the Depression. He starts writing for pulp magazines in the 1,930 seconds. The pay is terrible, 1 cent per word, sometimes less. You write fast or you don't eat. Jim Thompson writes fast. The first novel is published in 1942, Now and on Earth. It's based on his experience working in an aircraft factory. It's good. It doesn't sell. More novels follow through the 1,940 seconds. None of them sell particularly well. Publishers keep giving him contracts because he's reliable and fast, and the books are competent even when they're not commercially successful. But competent doesn't make you wealthy. Jim Thompson stays poor. The 1,950 seconds are his peak decade. He writes 30 novels between 1,952 and 1,959. 30 novels in 7 years. The math is simple. He needs money. Publishers will pay advances. The only way to make enough is to write constantly. The quality is uneven. Some are brilliant. Some are hack work completed in weeks. The Killer Inside Me in 1952 is his masterpiece. A first-person narrative by a sociopathic deputy sheriff. It's disturbing, violent, psychologically acute. It sells poorly. Hollywood notices him occasionally. He's hired to work on Stanley Kubrick's The Killing in 1956. He does uncredited work on Paths of Glory in 1957. Kubrick uses Jim Thompson's dialogue, his scene construction, his understanding of how violence and corruption work. Kubrick doesn't credit him adequately. This is standard Hollywood practice with writers use their work, pay them minimally, give credit sparingly. Jim Thompson gets paid, but not recognized. The problem is that Jim Thompson writes about losers, psychopaths, the underclass. His books have no heroes. The protagonists are often murderers, rapists, con artists. The plots are noir but bleaker than traditional noir. There's no redemption, no detective solving crimes, no moral order restored. The books end with death or madness, or both. This makes them critically interesting and commercially difficult. By 1960, the market for pulp novels is collapsing. Paperback originals are being replaced by television. Publishers are cutting their lists. Jim Thompson's sales decline. His drinking increases. He's always been a drinker, but now it's interfering with work. He misses deadlines. The prose gets sloppier. Publishers stop offering contracts. He tries television writing. He works on a few episodes of anthology series. The work is hack work, episodic crime stories. Nothing distinctive, nothing that uses his particular talents. The money helps temporarily. Then those jobs dry up too. By 1965, Jim Thompson is essentially unemployed. He's written 35 novels. He's worked in Hollywood. He's created a body of work that's unique in American crime fiction. None of it has made him secure. The 1,970 seconds are poverty. He's living in Los Angeles, struggling with diabetes, drinking despite the diabetes, unable to find regular work. His wife supports them on her salary. He writes when he can, but the drinking and illness make it irregular. Publishers aren't interested anymore. The market has moved on. Jim Thompson is 55, then 60, then 65, watching younger writers become successful while his books go out of print. The 7th of April 1977, Jim Thompson dies in a nursing home in Los Angeles. Lung disease, complications from diabetes, the accumulated damage of decades of drinking and poverty and stress. He's 70 years old. The obituaries are brief. The New York Times runs 4 paragraphs. Most newspapers don't mention him at all. The books are out of print. The Hollywood work was uncredited. He dies as he lived, obscure, poor, forgotten. But then something strange happens. French critics discover him. This is the 1,980 seconds. American pulp fiction is being re-evaluated in France. Critics start reading Jim Thompson. They realize what they're looking at, a genuine original. A writer who understood American violence and corruption in ways that more respectable authors didn't. Articles are written. French publishers reprint the novels. The reputation grows. The American revival follows. Film directors discover Jim Thompson. Stephen Frears adapts The Grifters in 1990. James Foley adapts After Dark, My Sweet. Michael Winterbottom adapts The Killer Inside Me. Suddenly, Jim Thompson is important. The books are reissued. Scholars write dissertations. He becomes required reading in noir literature courses. But Jim Thompson has been dead for 15 years by the time the revival happens. He never knows that his work will be remembered. He dies believing his career was a failure, that the 35 novels didn't matter, that the Hollywood work was wasted, that everything he wrote disappeared into obscurity. The revival vindicates him posthumously, but doesn't help him. You can't resurrect a reputation for someone who's already dead. The success comes exactly one lifetime too late. The particular cruelty of Jim Thompson's story is how close he came to recognition and how completely he missed it. If the French critics had discovered him 5 years earlier, if an American director had adapted one of his novels while he was still alive, if a major publisher had kept his books in print instead of remaindering them, if any of a dozen small changes had happened, Jim Thompson might have experienced recognition while it could mean something: money, security. Instead, he died poor and forgotten, watching television in a nursing home, unable to work, sustained by his wife's income, aware that his books were out of print and his name was unknown. The vanishing happened slowly, first from bestseller lists, then from bookstores, then from public memory, then from life. By the time he died, he had already been dead culturally for a decade. What vanishes with Jim Thompson is not unique to him. How many writers die before their work is recognized? How many artists create something valuable that the market doesn't value until after they're gone? Jim Thompson's case is particularly bitter because he knew he was good. The books are good. The Killer Inside Me is genuinely disturbing and brilliant, but good isn't enough. Timing matters. Luck matters. Jim Thompson had talent and discipline. He didn't have timing or luck. The novels remain. You can read them now. They're in print, in multiple editions, translated into dozens of languages. You can see the films based on them. You can study him in literature courses. He's canonical now, part of the essential reading of American noir. But Jim Thompson isn't here to see it. He vanished into a Los Angeles nursing home in 1977, believing his work vanished with him. The work survived. The man didn't. Barbara Bates is in All About Eve, not a major role, not even a speaking role in most of the film. She plays Phoebe, the young theatre usher who idolizes Eve Harrington, who watches the older characters with wide eyes, who represents the next generation of ambition waiting in the wings. The role is small but memorable. Barbara Bates appears in the final scene, already positioning herself as the next Eve, the cycle beginning again. The film wins Best Picture in 1951. Barbara Bates is 24 years old. Her career seems launched. She's born in Denver, 1925. She starts as a model. She's beautiful in the specific way that 1,940 seconds. Hollywood values dark hair, clear features, photogenic without being threatening. Universal signs her in 1945. She's 20 years old. The studio loans her out to other studios for small roles. The Fabulous Dorseys, The Adventures of Don Juan, A Letter to Three Wives. The roles are minor, but she's working consistently, building a resume, paying dues. All About Eve should change everything. It's a prestige production, major stars, serious script. Being in a Best Picture film should lead to better roles. But Fox doesn't promote Barbara Bates aggressively. She gets a few small parts. Let's Make It Legal. The Caddy, with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Nothing substantial. Nothing that uses what she demonstrated in All About Eve. The ability to suggest danger beneath innocence. The hint of calculation in Wide Eyes. Fox doesn't renew her contract. This is the moment that defines career trajectory. Some actors transition to other studios, find new contracts, continue working. Some don't. Barbara Bates doesn't. Without a studio contract, without an agent pushing her aggressively, the roles stop coming. She's 28 years old and essentially finished in major films. She marries. The marriage doesn't help. Her husband is in the film industry but can't create opportunities that don't exist. They have a child. Barbara Bates tries to be satisfied with domestic life. There's some evidence she struggles with depression. The transition from working actress to housewife is difficult for many women in this era. You had a career, an identity, a purpose, and suddenly you're supposed to find fulfillment in different things. The marriage fails. By the late 1,950 seconds, Barbara Bates is divorced, single mother, former actress, living on whatever money remains from her working years. She tries to revive her career. This is difficult for actresses in their 30s, especially actresses who weren't stars. Hollywood prefers younger women for most roles and established stars for older roles. Barbara Bates fits neither category. She gets occasional work in the 1,960 seconds, low-budget films, television guest spots, nothing sustained, nothing that suggests a real comeback is possible. Each year it gets harder. Each audition is more discouraging. The industry has moved on. New actresses fill the roles Barbara Bates might have played. Her name means nothing to casting directors too young to remember All About Eve. The depression deepens. There are suggestions in later accounts that she's hospitalized briefly for psychiatric treatment. The details are vague. This is the 1,960 seconds. Mental health treatment is stigmatized. Families don't discuss it publicly, but something is clearly wrong. The failed career, the failed marriage, the sense that the best years are gone and nothing comparable is coming. The 18th of March 1969, Denver. Barbara Bates is visiting her mother. She's been living in California but comes to Colorado periodically. The visit seems normal initially. Then on Tuesday evening, March 18th, Barbara Bates is found dead in the house. She's in the garage. Her head is in the gas oven. The oven is turned on. The garage door is closed. The method is classic carbon monoxide poisoning, relatively painless, often chosen by people who want to minimize trauma for whoever finds them. The suicide note exists, but its contents are not made public. The family confirms death was suicide. The newspapers reported briefly, actress Barbara Bates dies at 43. The cause is listed as accidental asphyxiation in some papers, suicide in others. There's no memorial service announced publicly. No Hollywood representatives issue statements. The death is noted and forgotten within days. The pattern is visible. Barbara Bates is another beautiful woman the studio system used and discarded. She's another actress who couldn't transition from contract player to independent career. She's another woman who struggled with depression in an era that offered limited treatment. She's another suicide that Hollywood noticed briefly and then forgot. But Barbara Bates's death is particularly bitter because of All About Eve. The final scene of that film is prophetic and cruel. Phoebe, played by Barbara Bates, idolizes Eve. She wants to be Eve. She watches Eve with calculating eyes. The implication is clear: she'll do whatever Eve did, sacrifice what Eve sacrificed, become what Eve became. The cycle of ambition and destruction continues. Barbara Bates became that cycle. She was used by the industry. She was praised briefly. She was discarded when convenient. She couldn't escape the pattern the film depicts. She became the warning about what ambition costs in Hollywood, not the successful version, but the version where ambition isn't enough, where beauty and talent and being in a Best Picture film still leads to obscurity and depression and a garage in Denver with the oven turned on. The irony is almost unbearable. All About Eve is about the cruelty of show business, about how the industry consumes people, about how success is temporary and the costs are permanent. Barbara Bates was in that film playing the next generation of victims. Then she became the actual next generation of victims. The film warned her, and she couldn't escape it. Bette Davis and Anne Baxter and Celeste Holm, the major actresses in All About Eve, had long careers, recognition, survival. Barbara Bates had a small role, and obscurity and death at 43. The difference isn't talent, it's luck, timing, the random distribution of opportunity that determines which actresses become legends and which become statistics. The films remain. You can watch All About Eve now. Barbara Bates is in the final scene, looking at Eve with calculation and desire. She's young, beautiful, alive, positioned at the beginning of what should be a career. The camera captures that moment of possibility. 20 years later, she's dead in her mother's garage. The moment of possibility led nowhere. The career ended before it really began. The beauty faded. The depression won. What vanishes with Barbara Bates is the potential. What vanishes is the career that All About Eve should have launched. What vanishes is the life that should have followed more roles, better roles, recognition, stability, happiness. All of it vanished into depression and failed comeback attempts, and finally into a garage in Denver. The studio system created her and destroyed her with equal efficiency. The film she's remembered for predicted her fate. She played the warning and became it. George Spanky McFarland is 3 years old when he's discovered. A casting director sees him in a department store, notices the round face, the unusual presence for a toddler, the way the child commands attention without trying. The year is 1931. Hal Roach Studios is producing Our Gang comedy shorts, the adventures of neighborhood children, wildly popular, shown before features in theaters nationwide. They need a new kid. Spanky McFarland becomes that kid. By age 4, he's the star. Our Gang revolves around Spanky, the chubby kid with the bowler hat, the kid who leads the others, whose reactions drive the comedy. He's in over 100 shorts between 1932 and 1942. He's the most recognizable child in America during the 1930 seconds, more famous than Shirley Temple in sustained exposure. Every kid in America knows Spanky. Every parent watches their kids watch Spanky. The work is constant. Filming schedules accommodate school legally, but barely. Spanky McFarland works more hours per week than most adults. He's performing comedy, hitting marks, delivering lines, doing retakes. He's making Hal Roach wealthy. He's making exhibitors wealthy. He's making everyone wealthy except himself. Child labor laws are weak. Contracts favor studios. Most of the money goes to parents or into trust funds that won't be accessible for years. But Spanky McFarland seems happy. The reports from set are consistently positive. He's professional. He's funny. He gets along with other kids. Directors like working with him. There's no suggestion of the darkness that surrounds other child stars, no abuse, no exploitation beyond the standard exploitation inherent in child acting. Just a kid doing a job, doing it well, being famous without understanding fame. The Our Gang series is winding down. Spanky McFarland is 14 years old. He's been working for 11 years. He's physically changing. Puberty is happening. The chubby child face is lengthening. The voice is deepening. Child stars aging out is always a problem. The studio has to decide. Transition him to teenage roles or end the contract. They end the contract. Here's where Spanky McFarland's story diverges from Bobby Driscoll. From most child stars, he doesn't fight the transition. He doesn't desperately seek more roles. He doesn't cling to fame. He accepts it. At 14 years old, with more self-awareness than seems possible, Spanky McFarland understands that the child star career is over, and that's acceptable. He goes to high school like a normal kid. There are attempts at comeback. In 1949, he appears in a few films, small roles, nothing significant. The attempts are half-hearted. By his early 20s, Spanky McFarland has stopped acting entirely. He gets a job selling soft drinks, not as publicity stunt, as actual employment. He marries. He moves to Texas. He lives a normal life far from Hollywood. This is voluntary disappearance. This is choosing obscurity over fame. Spanky McFarland doesn't have to leave Hollywood. He's still recognizable. He could trade on the name, do personal appearances, work nostalgia circuits. Our gang kids do this, showing up at conventions, doing autograph sessions, maintaining connection to their child fame. Spanky McFarland refuses. When reporters track him down in the 1,960 seconds and 1,970 seconds, his responses are consistent and slightly baffling to people who worship celebrity. He doesn't miss acting. He doesn't miss fame. He doesn't regret leaving. The line he uses repeatedly: "I was a fat little kid with a contract. That was a long time ago." The dismissal is complete. The child star career was something that happened to him, not something that defines him. He makes occasional exceptions for money. Television appearances on nostalgia shows in the 1,970 seconds and 1,980 seconds. He needs the income. Soft drink sales don't make you wealthy. But after the appearance, he disappears again. Back to Texas. Back to normal life. Back to being George McFarland rather than Spanky. The contrast with Bobby Driscoll is devastating. Both were child stars. Both were dropped by studios. Both faced the same transition crisis. Bobby Driscoll couldn't survive it. Drugs, obscurity, death in an abandoned building. Spanky McFarland survived it by walking away, by choosing to let the fame go, by accepting that child stardom was temporary employment rather than permanent identity. What makes someone able to walk away? Partly temperament, partly family support, partly luck. Spanky McFarland's parents didn't push him to continue acting. They allowed him to be normal. They didn't need him to be famous to validate themselves. This is rare. Most child star parents are living vicariously, needing the fame, making walking away impossible. Spanky McFarland's parents let him leave. That permission might have saved his life. The 1,990 seconds bring final recognition. Our gang shorts are rediscovered by new generations through television and then home video. Spanky McFarland is invited to Hollywood for tributes. He accepts some invitations. He signs autographs. He does interviews. But he's clearly bemused by the attention. He's 60-something years old. The fame is for something he did when he was 4. The disconnect is obvious to him, even if it's not obvious to fans. The 30th of June, 1993. Spanky McFarland dies in Texas. Heart attack. He's 64 years old. The obituaries are respectful. Major newspapers run them, child star Spanky McFarland dies. The emphasis is on the Our Gang years, on the comedy shorts, on the chubby kid with the bowler hat. The later years, the soft drink sales, the normal life, the deliberate obscurity are mentioned briefly, if at all. But the later years are the story. The later years are the miracle. Spanky McFarland is the rare child star who survived by Vanishing, who understood early that fame is temporary and sanity requires letting it go. He chose Disappearance. He chose normal life. He chose to be George McFarland instead of Spanky. That choice, repeated over decades, saved him from the fate of Bobby Driscoll and so many others. The Our Gang shorts still exist. You can watch them streaming, on DVD, on late-night television. Spanky is there in every one, 4 years old. 5, 6, 10, 12, performing comedy, being funny, being the center of attention. The child in those films has no idea he'll grow up to sell soft drinks in Texas. He has no idea he'll choose obscurity over fame. He's just a kid doing a job. The adult Spanky McFarland understood something that most child stars never learn. You can walk away. Fame doesn't have to define you. Child stardom doesn't have to destroy you. You can let it go and build something else. The vanishing doesn't have to be tragic. Sometimes disappearance is the healthiest choice available. The studio system destroyed Barbara Payton and Bobby Driscoll and dozens of others. It used them and discarded them and left them unprepared for normal life. Spanky McFarland used the studio system, worked for 11 years, made money, then left before it destroyed him. He vanished deliberately, completely, successfully. He died of natural causes at 64, having lived a normal life, having escaped the trap that killed so many. That's not tragedy. That's triumph. That's the one Hollywood vanishing story that ends well.